The fluorescent lights flickered like the uncertain hopes of the patients lining the corridor, each one trapped in a limbo of pain and recovery. A nurse, his scrubs stained with the remnants of an exhausting shift, hurried past a group of well-dressed executives, their laughter echoing off the sterile walls. They were gathered outside the CEO's office, the air heavy with the perfume of privilege and authority, their polished shoes tapping impatiently against the floor. "Did you hear about the new merger?" one of them sneered, dismissing the nurse with a fleeting glance. "Bet he doesn't know how to keep a business afloat." The nurse, Eli, clenched his jaw, drawing on the patience that had been forged in the fires of his own past. He shifted his gaze toward the door, knowing the CEO was inside, surrounded by sycophants who barely noticed the man's quiet competence. In his mind, Eli weighed the immense chasm between their worlds, his humble life measured in hospital shifts and midnight cries, while the CEO's existence sparkled with accolades and boardroom triumphs. As the door creaked open, the CEO emerged, her phone pressed to her ear, a frown etched across her brow. She caught Eli's eye momentarily, but the connection fizzled like static, her world far removed from his. Eli stood at the nursing station, the hum of medical machinery melding with the soft beeping of screens monitoring lives tethered to fragile threads. His hands, calloused from years of labor, moved deftly as he prepared a dosage of medication. Each calculated motion was a reminder of the sacrifices he had made, sleepless nights spent in war-torn countries, where survival was dictated by split-second decisions. The memories of those days haunted him, interwoven with the faces of comrades lost and civilians saved. They were sacrifices not just of body, but of spirit, and to Eli, every patient represented the fragility he had once fought to protect. He often felt an invisible weight pressing down on him, a burden of memories he rarely shared. The ache of loss was omnipresent, wrapped in the cloak of his everyday existence as a nurse. His job was to soothe, to mend, and to care, yet he carried with him the scars of trauma, both seen and unseen. The veteran support meetings had become distant echoes in his life, replaced by the urgent calls of patients needing reassurance. In the quiet moments, however, he yearned to connect, to speak of things beyond the surface. But in the bustling corridors, who would listen? As Eli glanced at the office door, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was an onlooker in a world that thrived on ambition and prestige. The laughter from the executives echoed hollow, a reminder of the chasm that separated him from that realm. In their polished suits and gleaming watches, they wielded their status like a weapon, impervious to the struggles of those they deemed beneath them. Eli had spent years learning to navigate through pain and uncertainty, but to them, he was just a cog in a vast machine, a role he played willingly, but one that left him feeling invisible. Yet, hidden beneath his humble demeanor was a strength forged in the fires of adversity. He offered compassion, understanding that each interaction could change a life. Young mothers clutched their children with trembling hands, and the elderly whispered fears of forgotten dreams, all of them turning to Eli for solace. In those moments, he became more than a nurse, he transformed into a beacon of hope. He exuded a quiet power that stemmed from his own trials, a silent resolve that made him strong. But with every interaction, he was reminded of his own isolation, a deep longing to be seen and understood beyond the scrubs he wore. Across the corridor, the CEO, Mary, emerged from her office with a phone glued to her ear, her brow furrowed in concentration. The scent of her designer perfume trailed behind her, sharp yet faint, a contrast to the antiseptic air that enveloped the hospital. Driven and disciplined, she had clawed her way to the top of a world that measured worth in profit margins and quarterly reports. Beneath her polished exterior lay a reservoir of fatigue, a constant struggle to balance the demands of her booming company with the emptiness that echoed in her personal life. Every day, she confronted the relentless expectations set by her predecessors and the investors who salivated over the next big merger. They revered her for her strategic mind, yet they saw only a fragment of her reality, a solitary figure in a boardroom, a queen in a fortress of ambition. The laughter of executives had become her only comfort, a thin veneer over the void that widened with each success. She had learned to bury her vulnerabilities beneath layers of professionalism, but that emptiness lingered like a shadow, reminding her that every triumph came at a cost. As the laughter from the executives faded into the background, Mary's mind drifted to the sacrifices that had accompanied her rise. Nights spent poring over spreadsheets, relationships that crumbled under the weight of ambition, all had forged her into a formidable leader, yet left her questioning the essence of her victory. And so, she filled her calendar with meetings, each one a distraction from the gnawing sense of disconnection that clung to her. It was easier to conquer markets than to confront her own solitude, to lead teams than to let anyone breach the fortress she had built around herself. In the stark contrasts of their lives, Eli and Mary danced around the edges of each other's worlds, yet remained isolated in their own. Where Eli found strength in vulnerability, Mary masked her wounds with armor. He sought connection in moments of healing while she craved assurance in her relentless pursuit of success. Their paths had crossed without them ever truly knowing one another, each representing the very aspects they lacked: a humble spirit driven by heartache and a powerful figure burdened by loneliness. Neither aware that, beneath their separate facades, they shared an unspoken yearning for understanding that transcended their respective worlds. The fluorescent lights flickered once more as the hospital's emergency alarm blared through the corridors, shattering the stillness that typically enveloped the nursing station. Eli's heart raced to a familiar rhythm, a call to action that stirred memories buried deep within him. Glancing over at the nearby nurses, he could see the shift in their demeanor. They instantly understood the gravity of the situation. He felt the familiar rush of purpose surging through his veins, igniting the instincts he'd honed amidst chaos. Mary had just stepped outside to receive a vital update on the merger when the alarm rang out, jolting her from her strategic reverie. As she turned sharply toward the source of the sound, her instincts screamed at her to remain composed, but the tension in the air was palpable. The hospital, a fortress of health, suddenly felt vulnerable, and beneath her polished exterior, anxious ripples of uncertainty began to surface. This was not her domain, she was simply the overseer, and yet, the stakes felt dangerously personal. As other executives began to scatter toward the exits, she spotted Eli, calmly assessing the situation while the chaos unfolded around him. Her eyes narrowed as she approached him, her heels clicking loudly against the linoleum like armored boots marching into battle. "Nurse," she called out, her tone clipped. "What's going on? We need to ensure everything runs smoothly. I can't afford any discrepancies today." Eli turned to her, a slight furrow in his brow as he took in her urgency. "There's been a code blue on the second floor," he replied, his voice steady, even in the face of her dismissal. "I'm heading up to assist. We need more hands on deck, and I recommend you follow me. I have a team of nurses." Mary interrupted him, her impatience flaring. "I don't have time for this. I need to know that my staff is managing the situation. Check with the charge nurse, I'll handle the executives." There was a sharpness to her words, a veneer of authority that disguised the anxiety creeping into her thoughts. Eli opened his mouth to respond, but he felt the weight of her dismissal like a wall between them, a divide crafted from her reluctance to see beyond surface-level necessity. "Ma'am," he said, his expression unyielding but respectful, "the best way to ensure everything is managed is to be present. The team needs consistent leadership. I promise you, I can handle this." He stepped toward her, the urgency of the moment transforming their dynamic as he kept his voice calm, avoiding any confrontational edge. There was something about him, an unshakable presence that caused Mary to pause, even if just for the briefest moment. The tension in the air shifted. Eli's unwavering gaze held something beneath the surface that intrigued her, a calm competence she had not anticipated from someone in scrubs. What lay behind those eyes? Mary hesitated as he continued, "I've handled far worse crises, and we can't risk being detached. If you come with me, we can get a clear overview and communicate effectively with your team." He was not just a cog, there was a reservoir of strength behind his words, an experience she couldn't place. With every heartbeat, Mary felt the winds of her preconceptions shift. She studied him, searching for the cracks in his facade. The clean lines of her world suddenly felt less certain. Perhaps this man, this nurse, held the answers she had overlooked in her quest for control. "Fine," she conceded, her tone softened but still pragmatic. "Lead the way." They made their way briskly up the staircase, Eli guiding her through the labyrinth of hallways with confidence honed by experience. As they reached the second floor, the atmosphere was charged with urgency. Nurses worked swiftly, their movements choreographed in practiced efficiency, while Eli slipped seamlessly into the flow. A young nurse, wide-eyed but efficient, approached him with a brief update. "We're stabilizing the patient, but we need more supplies quickly, and there's confusion on the floor." Eli nodded, mentally plotting a course of action while Mary observed, her assessment transforming into profound respect. The man before her was not just any nurse, he was a leader, his steady demeanor calming those around him, his knowledge drawing from a depth she had not known existed. "I'll organize the supplies," she offered, stepping forward without hesitation, her instincts finally aligning with the urgent need for collaboration. As they moved together through the unfolding crisis, Mary began to see the cracks in her earlier judgments, the walls of her ambition. In his quiet authority, Eli revealed a power she had never anticipated, prompting her to question what real strength looked like. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was more to be learned from this man than she had ever considered in their brief encounters. In the urgency of their shared mission, the barriers between them began to dissolve, hinting at a connection she had yet to truly understand. The atmosphere in the hospital had shifted, a palpable tension blending with urgency as Eli and Mary navigated the chaos surrounding the code blue. With every step, the gravity of the situation intensified. The patient wasn't just another statistic, he was a father, a husband, a life that demanded their utmost efforts. When they reached the nurse's station, Eli quickly organized the chaos, delegating tasks with a calm authority that surprised Mary. She stood back for a moment, taking in the scene, watching nurses respond to Eli's commands, their faces reflecting trust in a man they knew to be capable. "Get me an AED and a portable ventilator," Eli called to a nurse, who shot off to comply. Mary felt something shift within herself as she witnessed Eli's composed leadership. He moved with precision, each command resonating with a sense of urgency that seemed to recalibrate the energy of everyone around him. "This could have been my team in a boardroom." The thought struck her unexpectedly, a realization that the very qualities she valued in her corporate life mirrored those Eli exhibited in this moment of crisis. "Do you always manage chaos so well?" Mary asked, her tone aiming for lightness but edged with awe. Eli glanced back at her, a small smile breaking the tension in his features. "You could say I've had my share of crises. But it's not just about managing chaos. It's about trusting your team." His words lingered in the air, inviting vulnerability, yet revealing a strength that began to resonate with her own burgeoning self-awareness. As they moved deeper into the unfolding emergency, Mary felt a surge of adrenaline. Eli's command was rooted not merely in authority but in a profoundly human understanding of what it meant to save lives. The heart of leadership, she was beginning to see, wasn't always about titles or accolades. It was about empathy, collaboration, and a willingness to be present in the heat of the moment. "You're good at this," she admitted, her voice steady. "You should be leading more." Eli glanced at her, surprised at the unexpected compliment. "Thanks, but leadership often means understanding each person's strengths." She could see the sincerity in his eyes. This wasn't just a polished response but a reflection of a deeper philosophy forged through hardship. In that moment, she realized their worlds had collided in a way neither had anticipated. Here, in the fabric of crisis, they were both leaders, hers in strategy, his in service. At that moment, an emergency room doctor emerged from the patient's room, the tension on her face palpable. "We need more blood units." "Fast," she said, urgency lacing her tone. Eli looked to Mary, his eyes scanning the room for solutions. "We need to organize a blood drive immediately," he suggested, a spark of determination lighting his features. Mary nodded, suddenly aligned with a plan that ignited her instincts. "I can mobilize the executives. They can rally our corporate sponsors," she responded, mind whirring with possibilities. "Perfect," Eli said, gratitude evident in his eyes. They exchanged a brief moment of understanding, a bond forming amid the crisis. Mary felt a subtle shift in her perspective. She was no longer just the overseer but an integral part of this effort, a realization that reverberated through her being. With newfound trust, they worked seamlessly, each playing to the other's strengths. Eli guided the nurses, ensuring they were prepared for what lay ahead, while Mary made calls to the executives, turning their focus toward a common goal. As the minutes ticked on, Mary watched Eli with a blend of admiration and respect. The way he moved, the way he spoke, it all exuded an innate power that stemmed not from status but from a deep-seated desire to help others. "You know," she said, as she relayed updates to a corporate donor over the phone, "I underestimated the impact of your role. It's inspiring." Eli paused, a momentary lull in his activity. "In this line of work, you learn quickly that it's not just about saving one life. It's about the connections you build along the way." His words were small but meaningful, fitting into the puzzle of her understanding. As the chaos continued around them, Mary caught glimpses of the lives intertwined in this very moment, the patient's family anxiously waiting, the nurses working tirelessly, and Eli, the calm at the center of the storm. It dawned on her that their lives were not as disparate as she had once thought. They were both committed to their missions, drawn by a thread of instinct and empathy that transcended their respective roles. In that moment, their eyes met, a silent acknowledgement of the transformation happening between them. The barriers that had once confined them to rigid roles began to blur, revealing the hidden power that lay in their shared purpose. Just as Eli's experiences had shaped his approach, Mary's journey had carved a path to understanding beyond mere status. Together, they forged a connection that would transcend the sterile walls of the hospital, reminding them both that true strength often lies in the ability to trust and collaborate in the face of adversity. As the clamor of the hospital continued to envelop them, Eli could feel the faint pulse of old memories rising in his chest, memories he'd kept buried beneath layers of scrubs and purpose. The adrenaline of the emergency had stirred something within him, drawing him back to the days that had forged him into the man he was today. He glanced at Mary, who was busy coordinating the blood drive, but he could sense her scrutiny lingering on him, urging him to share more, to lift the veil on his silent past. The war had begun long before the day he found himself in the middle of a battlefield, surrounded by the sounds of chaos, the gunfire, shouts, and the distinct scent of smoke mixed with fear. Eli had enlisted, driven by a fierce sense of duty and a desire to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. His childhood had been marred by poverty, he knew too well what it was like to feel powerless. He had promised himself that he would never again be a passive observer in the lives of others. Yet, in the throes of conflict, he had learned that the heart of bravery was not just about confronting the enemy, but also about facing the aftermath. The day the bomb had exploded, he had raced into the fray, pulling wounded soldiers and civilians alike to safety. But amid the triumph of saving lives came the pain of loss. Friends he had known since basic training, bright-eyed and full of dreams, had not returned. Their laughs haunted him in his quiet moments, drawing shadows of guilt around his heart, a guilt that festered beneath the surface, unacknowledged in his daily life as a nurse. He had returned home not as the man he was before, but as a man marked by grief and trauma. His brilliance, once alive in the spark of youthful ambition, felt renounced in the face of what he had seen. He poured himself into his nursing career, hoping to channel his experiences into healing, believing that by caring for others, he could find redemption for the lives he could not save. In those hospital corridors, he became a protector once more, yet every patient's pain reminded him of the fragility of existence. As he helped the nurses secure supplies, Eli caught sight of Mary, her focus unwavering, yet in her eyes, he saw a flicker of the same weariness he recognized all too well. Here she was, a titan of the corporate world, shackled by the expectations she had woven for herself, yet the pressures of success echoed eerily like the pressures he felt on the battlefield. Her polished demeanor was armor against vulnerability, just as his taciturn nature shielded the scars of his past. Eli could sense that beneath her ambition lay a profound longing for connection, an understanding that was often lost in the noise of her corporate life. "Why did you choose nursing?" Mary asked, breaking into his contemplation as she paused beside him, her clipboard cradled against her chest. "It seems different from your past." The question hung between them, an invitation. Eli took a deep breath, the decision to share feeling like both a burden and a release. To be honest, it was never really a choice. It was a calling, a way to atone for what I lost. Each patient is a life that deserves to be fought for. Her gaze sharpened, an eagerness to comprehend the depth of his words anchoring her in place. "I thought I knew ambition," Mary admitted, a thoughtfulness crossing her features. "But even in my ascent, I feel disconnected." His expression softened, recognizing in her reflections the same loneliness he had grappled with. "You lead with a fierce determination, but does it bring you joy?" Eli's question was genuine, and Mary could feel the weight of it crashing against the polished walls she'd built around herself. Her ambition had been her shield, but at what cost? In her pursuit of accolades, she had overlooked the raw beauty of vulnerability, the connections that could transform both her life and the lives of those around her. As they exchanged words amidst the chaos, Eli felt the walls of his own past beginning to crumble, and in turn, he glimpsed vulnerability in Mary as she lowered her facade, if just a little. It was as though the hospital had become a crucible for both of them, a place where their true selves could emerge amid the chaos. It struck him that their worlds, in stark contrast, were bound by shared human experiences, whether forged in a boardroom or on a battlefield. Suddenly, in a flash of clarity, Eli realized that while he had buried his military past beneath the weight of responsibility, Mary had been doing the same with her own emotional burdens. They were each searching for meaning, for connection, for a way to bridge the distance between their lives. And in this moment of shared understanding, he sensed the fragile beginnings of something extraordinary, a bond that could transcend their distinct worlds. As they stood side by side, with the hum of the hospital swaying around them, Eli knew that they had just begun to uncover the hidden powers within themselves, powers that could forge a deeper exploration of life beyond the confines of their choices. Nothing would ever erase the scars of the past, but in the intertwining of their stories, they could redefine what strength truly looked like, an amalgamation of vulnerability, courage, and connection in a world that often struggled to embrace them both. The hospital had settled into a precarious calm after the chaos they had endured. Eli, now back at the nursing station, felt an undercurrent of purpose coursing through him. The earlier crisis hadn't just demanded quick thinking, it had sparked a transformation in him and Mary. They had deposited their burdens upon one another, layers of armor slowly chipped away in the aftermath. The air hummed with the promise of new beginnings, the fluorescent lights no longer flickering but firm in their illumination. But then, the stillness shattered. The emergency alarm rang out again, sharper this time, a sound that froze Eli mid-motion. Code Black rang out over the intercom, a code signifying an imminent threat, an active shooter situation on the premises. The words hit him like a punch to the gut, invoking memories he had long buried. He turned to see Mary already on her feet, eyes wide but focused, realizing they both stood on opposite ends of the spectrum, his past colliding with her present. "Follow my lead," Eli called out as he directed the nearby nurses toward secure locations, instinctively taking charge amid the pandemonium. He was a soldier again, fighting for safety, for lives, for protection. But this time, he was guided not by the visceral adrenaline of war but by the enormity of his present role as a devoted nurse and protector of the vulnerable. The chaos surged around him like a storm, yet he felt a calm clarity settle in, an old instinct awakening. Meanwhile, Mary darted back to the corporate corner of the hospital to gather other executives, her heart pounding against the confines of her tailored suit. She had once seen leadership through the lens of profit and performance metrics, but today, the stakes had shifted. Her leadership evolved from a sterile command toward a nuanced understanding of compassion and urgency, an illumination sparked by her encounters with Eli. She was a CEO now, not just in title but in action, collaborating, facilitating, supporting. "Get everyone to the designated safe zones," she ordered, her voice strong yet steady, as she rallied the executives and nurses alike with a newfound sense of solidarity. Her command wasn't born of entitlement, it was a product of shared purpose in a moment that demanded more than just authority. In that moment, Mary embraced vulnerability as a strength, uniting those around her not through fear but through hope and determination. Eli caught a brief glance of her out of the corner of his eye, witnessing the evolution of a woman who had once seemed distant and untouchable. Mary was changing, adapting to the urgency of the situation, embodying the same principles of care and connection he held dear. It sparked something deep within him. This woman stood not just as a corporate figure but as someone willing to face fear head-on, just as he had many times before. They were both more than their pasts, they were a testament to the strength found in compassion. As Eli ushered terrified patients and staff toward the nearest exits, a wave of bravado surged through him. "Mary," he called out as he approached her among the gathering crowd. "We need to establish a clear line of communication. Can you coordinate and relay information to security?" His voice rang with an authority that echoed from the depths of his experiences, a leader forged from the fires of chaos. Mary nodded, her eyes narrowing with determination. "Absolutely. I'll send updates to the team so everyone knows what to do next." In the near distance, shouts and scuffles broke out, a cruel reminder that danger loomed large, but amid that terror, Eli felt a sense of agency rekindled. He tossed aside the lingering shadows of his past, refusing to slip back into a place of paralysis. This moment was not about his scars, it was about the lives they could protect together. His heart raced not out of fear but from a primal drive to safeguard those in need, including Mary. As they moved with purpose, Eli and Mary found themselves side by side in the hallway, adrenaline pulsing in their veins. "Stick together," he urged, locking eyes with her, the unspoken understanding linking them with a surge of gratitude. What had been mere moments of connection had transformed into a partnership forged in the fires of a shared crisis. "We'll get everyone through this, we've got this," she replied, a reassurance blooming between them. In that heartbeat of urgency, they became a unit balancing each other's strengths and vulnerabilities. The winds of their past began to fade, replaced by a vision for what lay ahead. When they both emerged from the chaos, with steadfast hearts, they recognized that their hidden powers weren't simply rooted in their respective roles, but in their ability to transform and act with compassion amid the trials they faced. The burden of isolation that had shadowed them both would not disappear instantly, but together, they could navigate this unpredictable terrain, not as strangers but as allies, healing not only the lives around them but the wounds they both carried within. Days turned into weeks, and the chaos of that fateful day in the hospital began to settle into a haunting memory. Eli stood by the nursing station, staring out the window as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow that washed over the sterile walls of the building. The echoes of sirens had faded, and the hospital was regaining its rhythm. Yet, for Eli, the shadows of that day lingered, lingering just beneath the surface. Mary had emerged as a force within the hospital, her leadership a blend of authority and empathy that resonated throughout the corridors. It was a transformation that inspired Eli, who watched her navigate the complexities of both corporate and medical life with a newfound grace. They had become allies in a way neither had anticipated, bound by shared responsibilities and the unspoken understanding of the weight they both carried. One afternoon, as Eli prepared for the evening shift, he paused to watch Mary interact with a group of children in the waiting area, her laughter a bright contrast to the solemnity of the hospital. She knelt to their level, listening intently as they spoke about their favorite superheroes. Eli observed as a little girl with pigtails, her small hands clutching a worn teddy bear, reached out to Mary, offering the toy with a shy smile. "Will you keep him safe for me?" the girl asked, her voice a whisper of both innocence and vulnerability. Mary took the bear gently, her expression softening. "I promise to take care of him, just like I take care of everyone here," she replied, a warmth in her tone that resonated deeply with Eli. In that moment, he felt the weight of their respective journeys reflected in the simple act of trust, a child seeking assurance in a world that sometimes felt overwhelming. Eli's gaze met Mary's as she stood, the teddy bear cradled against her heart. An unspoken bond threaded through the air between them, one woven from understanding and the shared weight of responsibility. There was no need for grand gestures, no declarations of identity. Just a moment, fleeting yet profound, that echoed with the promise of safety, of connection in the face of uncertainty. As he returned to his duties, Eli felt a flicker of peace settle within him. The past would remain, marked by scars that told stories of survival, but in this moment, he found solace in a world that acknowledged both fragility and strength. It was here, in the quiet sanctuary of their shared purpose, that he began to understand the beauty of vulnerability, a hidden power that could illuminate even the darkest corners of their lives. And in the laughter of a child, the promise of hope whispered softly, reminding Eli that new beginnings often blossom from the shadows of what once was.